Do you like mysteries? To wander through the enigmatic mist of the inexplicable? Great. I'm Merc, and here you'll find what you're looking for. Welcome to my domains. The truth dissolves into the mist.
In the dead of night, when the mist clings to the roots of the oldest trees, a silence falls over the countryside of Argentina and Paraguay. It is not the peaceful silence of sleep, but a heavy, watchful quiet. The dogs stop barking, the chickens huddle together in their coops, and the locals, they lock their doors not against thieves of flesh and blood, but against something that walks the forest floor with its feet turned backwards. This is the domain of the Pombero, a spirit so deeply feared that even in the 21st century, grown men leave small offerings on their doorsteps before sunset. They know that to ignore him is to invite chaos into your home, a chaos that begins with a whistle in the dark and can end with your very life unraveling. Imagine a figure, no taller than a child, yet with the broad, muscular frame of a man. Its body is covered in thick, dark hair, a matted coat that blends seamlessly with the shadows of the jungle. But it is the feet that betray its nature, inverted, with the heels pointing forward and the toes trailing behind. This is not a deformity, but a deliberate trick, for the Pombero despises being followed. When you see tracks leading into the forest, you are actually seeing the path it took to leave. You think you are walking away from danger, but in truth you are walking straight towards it. This is the first of many inversions, a creature that thrives on confusion, a guardian of the wild who views your home as an intrusion on his land. What is it that makes a modern farmer, a man who uses GPS and drives a pickup truck, still leave a cigar and a bottle of rum on his windowsill every night? It is not superstition, not in the way we understand it. It is a transaction, a fragile peace treaty between the world of concrete and the world of thorns. The Pombero, you see, is not a demon in the Christian sense, nor is he a simple fairy tale to scare children. He's a dueño, a landowner. The Guarani people knew this long before the arrival of colonizers. He is the master of the animals, the keeper of the birds, the voice of the silent forest. To disrespect his domain, to hunt without asking, to build without permission, is to sign a contract you never knew existed, a contract whose penalty clause is written in suffering. You might be listening to this, sitting in your well-lit room, far from the red dirt roads of the Argentine north, and feel a sense of safety. But the reach of the Pombero is not measured in miles, but in intention. He is a spirit of thresholds, of the window, the door, the fence line. He is the reason why, in countless villages, you will never see a child left alone to play near the tree line after the Angelus bell rings. Mothers whisper warnings that are not metaphors. They do not say, "Be careful, or you might get lost." They say, "Be careful, or he will take you." And in these communities, the concept of lost takes on a terrifyingly literal meaning. A sudden disappearance that the police reports will file under runaway, but the neighbors know is something far more ancient and predatory. He is, above all else, a creature of mood. A travesso, they call him, a trickster. But the line between a prank and a curse is a thin one when the prankster is not human. You might find your tools scattered across the yard, the milk has soured overnight, or a single piercing whistle sounds from the roof, a sound that seems to come from inside your own skull. These are the warnings. These are the invitations to make amends. To ignore them is to escalate the conflict. The farmer who cuts down a tree without leaving an offering of tobacco might wake to find his prized horse tangled in its own stall, bleeding from wounds that look like the scratches of thorns, but are too precise, too deliberate, to be an accident. But the true terror of the Pombero lies not in his mischief, but in his silence. He is known as the Pyrog, the hairy foot, but also as the one who steals your voice. Victims who claim to have encountered him speak of a sudden, suffocating muteness that falls upon them. They see him standing at the foot of their bed, a small, hulking shape, and they open their mouths to scream, but no sound comes out. It is a violation of the most basic human instinct, the cry for help. This silence is the precursor to the true horror, the slow unraveling of a life. Illnesses without names, a depression that is not chemical but spiritual, a succession of bad luck so profound it feels targeted. The Pombero does not need to chase you. He simply turns the world against you. This is why the offerings are so specific. You do not give him money, and you do not give him food from your table. You give him the vices of men, honey for sweetness, tobacco for contemplation, and aguardente, the fiery sugar-cane liquor, for strength. It is a recognition of his nature, a wild, untamed, masculine spirit. You place these gifts, not in the forest, but on the boundary, at the edge of your property, the neutral ground between his kingdom and yours. And in the morning, if the honeypot is empty, if the cigar has been smoked down to a perfect ash, you breathe a sigh of relief. The peace is kept for another day. You have paid your rent to the landlord you cannot see. There are those, however, who claim to have seen him, and their stories never end with a simple scare. They speak of a moment of eye contact, two dark, gleaming eyes in the underbrush, a gaze that feels like a physical weight. They describe a smell, a pungent mix of wet fur, raw earth, and something else, something floral and cloying that sticks to the back of the throat. In the 1980s, in a small town in the province of Corrientes, a hunter named Eliso went into the forest after a deer and returned 3 days later. He was found wandering the main road, his hair turned white, his fingernails torn. He never spoke another word for the rest of his life, not one. He would only rock back and forth. His feet, the doctors noted, instinctively turned slightly inward as if trying to walk in reverse. The phenomenon has never been studied, not seriously. Anthropologists call it folklore. Psychologists call it mass hysteria. But folklore does not make a grown man build a fence around his own well, convinced the Pombero will poison the water. And mass hysteria does not explain the consistency of the reports across centuries, across countries, across cultures that had no contact with one another. The Guarani, the Spanish settlers, the modern farmers, they all describe the same being, the same habits, the same rituals. When a hallucination is this uniform, this persistent, it ceases to be a simple fantasy and becomes something else entirely, a presence that is either real or a truth so deeply embedded in the land that it manifests regardless of who is looking. So what happens when the offerings stop? When a new generation, skeptical and urban, moves to the countryside and scoffs at the old ways? There is a story told in the departments of Misiones, a cautionary tale repeated in hushed tones. A young man, an agronomist from Buenos Aires, bought a plot of land and cleared it for soy. He laughed at the workers who asked him to leave a cigar under a ceibo tree. He called it primitive. Within a year, his crops failed, not due to blight, but because the birds, for no apparent reason, ate every single seed. His wife began to suffer from night terrors, waking up with scratches on her legs. And then, one morning, the man himself was found standing in his own field, staring at the fence line, unable to speak. When he finally regained his voice, he only said one thing: he was watching me from the beginning. We return now to the figure in the mist, the keeper of the boundaries. Because the story of the Pombero is not just a story about a forest spirit, it is a story about respect, about the terrifying consequences of ignoring the invisible lines that separate the civilized world from the wild. You see, to live alongside the Pombero is to live in a state of perpetual negotiation. He is not a creature you defeat, or exorcise, or trap. He is a force of nature, like a river that floods or the sun that scorches. You do not fight the river. You build levees. You leave offerings of respect. This is the cosmic order of the countryside, a balance that has been maintained for centuries through fear and ritual. And when that balance is broken, the retribution is not swift, it is patient, creeping into your life like a vine strangling a tree. Consider the specific nature of his vengeance. It is never straightforward. He will not strike you down in a fit of rage. Instead, he will dismantle your life piece by piece. A farmer's best cow will stop giving milk. A horse will inexplicably break its leg in a flat field. A roof will begin to leak in a dozen places at once. It is a campaign of attrition designed to wear you down, to remind you that you are a guest in his home. The psychological torture is perhaps the most refined. You will hear footsteps on the gravel outside your window at 3 in the morning, but when you look, there is nothing but the wind. You will feel a presence behind you in your own home, a cold breath on your neck, only to turn and find an empty room. The most extreme cases, the ones that are whispered about at village wakes, involve the disappearance of women. The Pombero is said to have a particular appetite for young, solitary women, for maidens who wander too far from the safety of the village. He does not attack with violence, but with seduction, a hypnotic whistling that lures them into the deep forest. They say he can mimic the voice of a lover, or a crying child, a sonic trap that compels you to walk deeper and deeper into the thicket until the trees close around you like a prison. Some women return weeks later, disoriented, with no memory of where they have been, carrying with them a strange, otherworldly pregnancy. Others are never seen again, leaving behind only a single shoe or a torn piece of cloth, found hanging from a branch too high for any man to reach. There is a cruel irony in his methods, a reflection of our own trespasses. He steals your objects just as you stole his land. He scatters your tools just as you scattered his forest. He silences your voice just as the roar of machinery silenced the animals. The relationship is one of mirrors, a dark reflection of humanity's impact on the wild. To encounter the Pombero is to come face to face with the consequence of your own intrusion. This is why the old ones say that the only way to truly ward him off is to live in harmony with the land, to hunt only what you need, to ask permission before you take. It is a morality tale disguised as a monster, but a morality tale that has real, tangible consequences for those who ignore it. And what of those who dare to mock him? In the age of smartphones and viral videos, there is a new breed of adventurer, the urban explorer who travels to rural areas with a camera, hoping to capture proof of the Pombero. They go into the forest at night, calling out his name, challenging him to show himself. They treat the legend as content, as a spectacle. Locals watch these attempts with a mixture of horror and grim resignation. They know what happens to those who taunt the guardian. The videos that surface are usually uneventful, just shaky footage of dark trees and nervous laughter. But sometimes the footage goes dark, the audio cuts to a deafening static, and the person holding the camera disappears from the internet for weeks. When they reappear, they refuse to talk about what happened. They just say they don't make that kind of content anymore. The presence of the Pombero is so deeply enrooted that it has adapted to the modern world. It is not an ancient legend fading into obscurity. It is a living practice. You can drive through the rural outskirts of Asuncion today and see small clay bowls placed by the gates of modern brick houses. Inside those bowls, you will find a cigarette, a piece of raw honeycomb, and a splash of canna. The homeowners are often young. They use Wi-Fi. They watch Netflix, but they will not risk the wrath of the Pombero. This is not a contradiction. It is pragmatism. In a world where so much is uncertain, the ritual offers a sense of control. It is a small price to pay for a peaceful night, a simple insurance policy against the chaos that lurks just beyond the porch light. But what happens when you do everything right? When you leave the offerings? When you respect the trees? When you never whistle at night? Does the Pombero leave you in peace? The answer, according to the lore, is complicated. He is not a tame spirit. Even if you are his ally, his presence is a constant pressure. He is the reason why, in many homes, there is a specific chair that no one sits in, left empty for the spirit. He is the reason why mothers will cut the fingernails of their newborns and bury them under a stone, so the Pombero cannot use them for dark rituals. Even in peaceful coexistence, the rules must be followed with a fanatical precision. A single misstep, a forgotten offering on a full moon, can break the truce. There is a deeper layer to this belief, one that few outsiders ever grasp. For the Guarani, the Pombero is not simply a malevolent entity. He is a defender. He protects the animals from overhunting. He guards the sacred springs from pollution. He punishes those who take more than they need. In a world ravaged by deforestation and industrial farming, the figure of the Pombero takes on a new resonance. He is the last line of defense, the ancient law that refuses to be extinguished. When a corporation comes to clear a forest, the local workers are often the first to rebel, not out of environmental activism, but out of a deep, visceral fear of what the Pombero will do to them if they participate in the destruction. So, the question I leave with you, the viewer, is this: what is the nature of a curse? If a community of people, across generations, consistently suffers misfortune, illness, and disappearance when they ignore a specific set of rules, does it matter whether the cause is a supernatural entity or a collective psychological phenomenon? The result is the same. The fear is the same. The bodies that go missing in the night are just as gone. The Pombero exists in the space between belief and reality, a gray zone where the power of faith meets the hard ground of consequence. He is the shadow that moves when you turn your head, the whistle you hear when you are alone, the deep-seated knowledge that you are not the apex predator in this world. To this day, in the remote estancias of Argentina and the dense jungles of Paraguay, there are rooms that remain empty, doors that are left ajar, and cigars that burn down to ash on windowsills for no visible reason. Outsiders might see superstition, but insiders see survival. They know that the forest has eyes, that the land has a memory, and that there is a little, hairy man with backwards feet who watches it all. He does not ask for much, just a sip of rum, a puff of smoke, and your unwavering respect. But if you refuse, if you laugh at the old stories, then you have been warned. Listen closely, because if you are very quiet, in the dead of night, you might just hear it, a low, melodic whistle coming from the edge of the woods. And if you do not, under any circumstances, whistle back.
Did you like this mystery? And what is your theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, then like and share. I'm Merc, and I'll be waiting for you in the next mystery.